Well, they say there are no guarantees in life, but if there could be, Mase, wouldn't we want a guarantee on the box that Omarion Hampton is a Denver Bronco?
You want to guarantee that, how high do you have to go? You know, if it's the limbo stick, how low must you go? Or if it's Omarion Hampton, it's how high must you go?
How high?
I say how high.
Yes. How high is too high for Omarion Hampton? Obviously, there's a point of ridiculousness, but Mase, honestly, I don't think you could really get too high because you're not getting into the top 10.
No,
that's the point.
Realistically, I mean, that's the thing. You know, we talk about Ashton Genty. We talk about that being the audacious move. If you're really gonna do something crazy. But that isn't something that I think the Broncos, maybe not everyone with the Broncos really wants to do. I don't think it's something George Payton really wants to do.
Right.
And is it the wise thing to do team building from team building perspective? I mean, it's obviously a roster that has fewer holes than it had before, but there are things you want to do, and there are things you want to do in day two, because you do want to get another tight end, and you do want to get a defensive lineman, and you wouldn't mind finding another wide receiver elsewhere in the draft. There are things that need to be done roster-wise out of this draft that do involve keeping your draft capital, at least as much of it as you can. And so that's why you take a look at saying, okay, maybe you don't want to move up to 5, but if you want to assure yourself of Ashton Genty, do you have the conversation of saying, all right, do we have to fiddle around with some draft capital, perhaps moving up 3 picks? And does that, 3 picks, 4 picks, 5 picks? And does that mean you have to have a conversation perhaps about a deal that, maybe you don't want to sacrifice your 85th overall pick, but is that something that comes up? Or is it a deal that involves future capital? Like, to me, if you could get a deal done, if you could assure yourself of Ashton Genty and you could sacrifice round 3 in the 2026 draft, I'd do that. Like, if you could move
credit card.
Yeah. Pick 15 or pick 16. If you could move up with Atlanta or Arizona, that'd be moving up 4 or 5 picks from 20 to 15 or 16. And you could do it for round 3 in 2026. And draft value chart wise, that's probably, that's about a 150, a 200 point move. That's roughly equivalent to a mid 3rd round pick. I'd say, okay, that's something pretty doable. I'd jump on that if I could do it.
Let's get into some news of the day, Mase, and tie it into our conversation about how do you guarantee you can get Omarion Hampton. First and foremost, it's not the top 10. However, when Jeff Duncan from the New Orleans Times-Picayune reports something, we listen. There's not many Saints reporters. He's one of the best, if not the best. There's like 3 of them. But Jeff has said that, they're kind of out on Shedeur Sanders. He does not expect him to pick Shedeur Sanders. So, 9 could be available. And that puts you in front of Chicago. If Ashton Genty goes to the Raiders, Chicago's still interested in a running back. And if they're like other teams and think Hampton and Genty are pretty close, I'm not saying Chicago's going to pick Hampton, but you have to at least have that intel if you're the Broncos to be like, we got to watch Chicago, whether it's Genty at 10 or Hampton at 10. There's a possibility there. Maybe smaller one for Hampton, but it's still there based on how much we hear they want Genty bad.
Then is that worth going all the way up to 9? Because now you're talking about, if you go by the Jimmy Johnson chart, you're talking about a 500 point difference. 500 points is equivalent to the number 40 pick overall. That's a round 2 pick. And the Broncos, obviously, in round 2, they pick 51st. That's 390. So you're talking about to go from 20 to 9, realistically, you're probably talking about a 2nd round pick this year, a 3rd round pick next year. Is that too much to do? to go from 20 to 9. If that's what you need to do to get Hampton. Is that too spicy a meatball? Is that
how much is Hampton between Henderson? If Henderson's your third back, what do you think about that difference?
Yeah, is that worth the difference between Hampton and Henderson? And the other thing that comes into play is this. Let's say New Orleans has decided they're not in the Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes, but they are in the Jackson Dart sweepstakes. And if they're not going to take Shedeur there, that sends Shedeur into the late teens, early 20s, potentially still being on that board, which means a team like Cleveland could be calling the Broncos at 20. And Cleveland might be offering you pick 33, pick 67, pick 94. Okay? So you could go from 20 down, but you could all of a sudden be sitting there and you might be out of round 1, at least unless you make another deal, but you might be, at least for a moment, sitting there with 2 second-round picks and 3 round 3 picks. Now, you could obviously take some of those and move your way back up into the back part of round 1. But then you're in that range where George Payton has said that's where the depth of the draft is. And so you may not be able to get Omarion Hampton, and you might take yourself out of Travion Henderson if you move down. But there you start talking about volume. You're sort of recreating in the aggregate. So you maybe if you're making that sort of deal down, but then all of a sudden you look and you say, holy cow, we got 5 day 2 picks. Then you're giving yourself a little bit of luxury here. Now you're going into the George Payton more darts thing where you could get 2 day 2 backs and a day 2 tight end and a day 2 defensive lineman and have something left over. So what if you all of a sudden say, okay, you could get Quinshon Judkins or Caleb Johnson, and you could assure yourself of a Brashard Smith. You might be able to get the best, pass catching back in the draft and a power back. And oh, by the way, you could maybe get yourself Elijah Arroyo or Harold Fanning Jr. at tight end.
Mason Taylor.
Yeah, Mason Taylor. You could take Mason Taylor right there at pick 33 to open the second round potentially.
Yep.
Or you might, if you roll the dice, who knows? Travion Henderson might even be there sitting there at 33 for you. So there's some possibilities there. Like I would actually say if Omarion Hampton, if you did not trade up for him, because I think 9 is probably a bridge too far to trade up for Omarion Hampton, in my opinion. To me, if you're talking about trading up for Omarion Hampton, I'm talking more about the 15-16 range. 9 seems like it's too rich. I also think 20 is too high to pick Travion Henderson. Travion Henderson, that's, to me, the proper range is about pick 29 to pick 38 for him.
Might be where he goes because the Commanders and Chiefs both like him.
Yes, which is probably, I think that's fair. You sort of have to play this game here. Fortunately, you've got such quality and such depth at running back, and I know some draft nicks don't agree. Like Mel Kiper Jr. will tell you he's not as enamored with the depth of the class as, say, Daniel Jeremiah. It's like everyone's got a different opinion. Right. I'm pretty enamored with the depth of this class. I'm not sure that if you don't get Hampton or Genty, I think I'd rather sit there and get volume of picks on day 2. Like if you told me you could get Hampton or Genty, great. But if you can't get them without giving up too much, I think I'd rather be sitting there with Judkins and Brashard Smith. If you could have a bunch of day 2 capital and then getting a Mason Taylor or an Arroyo or Fannin right there, because then I could also get myself a day 2 defensive lineman and potentially a day 2 wide receiver as well.
May I play a game, Mace? Play with your emotions
Yeah.
and ask you something deep and personal right here on this show. Can I do that?
Sure.
Would the Saints pass on Shedeur twice? Because
Yeah.
part of my sell to New Orleans, and I've heard they like Quinn Ewers, but let's just say they like Jackson Dart. You could say 20 you could sell. You could sell them 20 as a sellable asset. It's like buying crypto. Like, wait till it goes up. Like you could sell 20 to the Saints as something they could turn in to all those picks. So your price might be less. I get what you're saying. 9's a bridge too far. I get that. But if you could sell to Mickey Loomis, George Payton on the horn, Sean Payton, pulling some, asking for some favors, like, hey, if you guys really like Quinn Ewers in the second or Jackson Dart in the second, the Browns are going to give you 33 for Shedeur. Would the Saints pass? Because the Saints do not see, and they could be wrong, and Thursday they draft them at 9 and whatever. But if you're the Saints, do you pass on Shedeur twice?
See, it depends it depends how they feel about Shedeur Sanders. They might not like Shedeur Sanders. And if they don't, if they just plain don't like him, then maybe it's a point where they say, oh, we don't like him at 9, but maybe we don't like him at 40 either, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they just plain don't like him, then they're not going to, then maybe they say they only like him at 112. So, I mean, yeah, like what gets me thinking about that is like, you go back to the Broncos in 2019. They didn't like Drew Lock at 10. They didn't like him at 20. They liked him in the 40s. So they picked him in the 40s. But there was that whole thing of with Drew Lock. They passed on him at 10. They passed on him at 20. They even passed on him in the 40s once because they picked Dalton Reisner before they picked Drew Lock. They passed on him effectively 3 times. So did they really, really dig Drew Lock? When you think about it.
Yep.
Did they? Just saying. I'm sure there'll be some comments about that because to this day, Drew Lock, Drew Lock, it's not quite like Tim Tebow, but there's still a percentage of the fan base that's still like picking at a scab when you bring up Drew Lock.
Right. But it's happened before and it could happen again. Remember, Elway told Drew at the Senior Bowl, you're going to be a top 10 pick. They had 10. They didn't take him.
They traded down.
I'll remember it was Derek Wolf's year, right? Because I had him Doug Martin and Levante David that year, and then they moved back and they get Derek Wolf and then Brock Osweiler. They move out of the first round and get Derek Wolf that year. Mace, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like if you're New Orleans, you could almost sell him. And if you're New Orleans, don't you need just picks and picks and picks? You need young players. You need picks and picks and cheap players.
And they need so much. To me, if I were New Orleans, I'm not taking the quarterback that I'm building around this year.
No.
I don't think that roster is ready for a quarterback of the future yet. See, the thing I like about the Broncos building process the last few years is they built the roster to where it was ready for Bo Nix in 2024. And in particular, they built the line. By 2024, they'd brought in and developed Quinn Miners. They'd had Garrett Bowles for a long time, who'd become a top dozen left tackle. They'd signed Ben Powers. They'd signed Mike McGlinchey. Really, the only real question you had was center after they'd had to let Lloyd Cushenberry go because of the post-Russell Wilson dead money cap crunch. But you had 80% of an offensive line that was in really good shape. In other words, you'd done the work to ensure that Bo Nix, a young quarterback, was going to be protected. It was to their credit. And you'd done the personnel work on the defensive side to ensure that you weren't going to get run over. Bo wasn't going to be in a situation where he was going to have to fling it around all the time and play catch up constantly. So that's why Bo had pretty good infrastructure around him, and the team was ready to plug in a young quarterback. The Saints roster is not ready for a young quarterback to be plugged in. That's why if I were whispering in the ears of Mickey Loomis and Kellen Moore, I'd be like, your roster's not ready. Your team's not ready for this. Ride out this year with what you have at quarterback. Don't draft a Jackson Dart and throw him to the Wolves now. They're not ready for the quarterback. Use this year, collect picks, build up the infrastructure. Then next year or the year after, then go get your quarterback. That team's not ready for it.
Yep.
They're going to, but if they pick a quarterback, they're going to do that. It's not going to be ready for that quarterback, and they're going to find themselves in this vicious cycle again. I'm just trying to help them out here.
Just play Spencer Rattler, win whatever you can, and collect picks. The Broncos could be part of that. So you say nine's a bridge too far for Omarion Hampton. I tend to agree, unless you could sell New Orleans on selling 20 as well. Then Jerry Jones. Of course, Jerry's got to be in the news. It's been like a week, and Jerry Jones hasn't been in the news. So he's back in the news today. Hey, we're wheeling and dealing, phone calls. Like, Jerry makes it seem like he's doing a deal right now. Okay. Howie Roseman may actually be doing a deal right now because Howie loves trades, but Jerry is getting the attention at 12. There's a couple of hurdle points in this draft: 6 with the Raiders, 10 with the Bears, 12 with the Cowboys. Do you just deal with the Cowboys, who have, I believe they've had Omarion Hampton in for a 30 visit?
Yeah.
I do love that more people are just calling it a 30 visit, by the way.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, world.
Not top 30.
They're not the top 30, but do you buy the Jerry's wheeling and dealing thing? Do you think that their interest in Hampton is real? Do you just do a deal with them? Do you pick up the phone for John Lynch in San Francisco at 11? Like, now, if we're not doing 9, and remember, George Payton said from 10 to 32, these picks are kind of the same, graded.
I'll tell you, San Francisco is interesting at 11 because that's a team that ought to be in volume accumulation mode.
Very much so, yes.
Because they're trying to dig out of some contracts. And of course, they're about to have Brock Purdy get very expensive here. That's been in the news. Like, they're trying to get that deal done. So they are looking for pick accumulation. They are looking for volume of young players here. So the 49ers definitely appear to be that team that is receptive. So they are in an intriguing spot, and that's also a team that trade-wise, you can work with them. You can create a very fair deal with the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
So
friendly team you've worked with before.
Yes. That it's a 400-point difference, by the way, in the Jimmy Johnson chart. 20 to 11. Pick 51 is 390 points. So that is almost nearly on the nose. You give up your 2 to move up to pick 11. Basically, then you're talking about it to balance the scales point wise. You throw in a 6th rounder. That's actually a pretty, and then probably to balance out to get you in terms of volume of picks, you probably send a 7th rounder back. That's actually a pretty easy deal to make.
Is that too far? Is that too much for him? This sounds like a pretty good deal, Mase.
It's a fair deal. It hurts you a bit to lose the 6th rounder, to lose the 2nd rounder, pardon me. At the same time, you know what, though? That is also it's the guarantee on the box, though, at running back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're like, okay,
I want a stud.
I've got my 3-down guy.
I want the stud.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them in this draft. And depending on what people think of Devin Neal, there's 2 that we know are studs. I want the stud.
Oh, man, that's tough. I hate losing pick the 2nd rounder. Like, it hurts.
Could you switch that to next year's?
Good trades hurt.
Yeah. That's true. There's going to be a sting. There's going to be a little bit of pain to this, Mace, but I am here to alleviate your pain. Do you know how I'm going to do that?
Because you're going to say, try to do it with next year's too.
Or I'm going to say, deal with Jerry and sell him on Shedeur being there at 20. Jerry wouldn't take Shedeur at 12. Jerry sure as you know what would take him at 20. Dude, I'm getting chills literally right now as we're speaking. Again, use Jerry against him. Use his excitement against him, man. Shedeur, he's right there. Don't trade with Cleveland. You just take him right at 20, and you know Jerry would love because I got extra picks. I mean, we moved back from 12 to 20, and yeah, they got Hampton, but we got extra picks and we got Shedeur.
Do you know how much chaos you would have just created by getting Shedeur Sanders to the Cowboys?
Sprinkle it in.
Why would you do that to poor Brian Schottenheimer, man? The guy's waited all this time for his shot.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah.
And you do that to him.
I do love Marty.
He seems like a really nice guy.
I love his dad, man. I know you're a historian of this game, but I mean, I love Marty Schottenheimer. I don't care if he's a division rival or not. I've always loved Marty. God rest his soul. Love Marty. But Brian, it's Jerry's world, baby. You're doing what he wants to do.
Marty was a good man. Brian's a good man. I don't want to see that for him.
But you use Jerry's energy against him, man. Like, hey, yeah. With 20, we'll jump up to 12. But I mean, you could get Shedeur at 20, Jerry. I'm just saying. I mean,
I don't want to do that to him. I don't want to do that to Brian.
I want Omarion Hampton. Forget Brian Schottenheimer. I want Omarion Hampton.
I know. That's the problem with this zero-sum game that is this sport. Somebody's always going to get hurt.
Well, who's most likely to listen? John Lynch in pick acquisitions. He's like EV99. New acquisitions. Only Star Wars fans will get that. Or who's more apt to listen? Jerry when you could get Shedeur.
Yeah.
Because Jerry would have the built-in excuse of like, well, we got more picks and we got Shedeur. So it's like a future thing. Or hell, they could trade Dak during the draft. Who knows? It's Jerry. He's nuts. All I know is catapulting up there. There's some friendly teams. The 49ers are friendly. The Saints are friendly.
Yeah.
9, 12, 11. Yes, Arizona. Yes, Atlanta. That's a jump as well because Hampton's going to have suitors in perhaps the Steelers, perhaps the Chargers. The Commanders like Travion Henderson. And if you like Travion Henderson, you should like Omarion Hampton too. Hampton's not going to be there if you move back with Cleveland to 33. That's a different conversation.
Well, you mentioned Atlanta. We know George Payton and Terry Fontenot have made deals before. So
yeah, Terry's a good dude.
They are. Yeah.
Good Jim. Mm-hmm.
Terry will pick up the phone.
Yep.
Pretty quickly when George calls.
Yep. And George is in the relationship business. He has great relationships all over this league. He's got a great reputation.
The relationship building aspect of George Payton is his superpower.
Yep.
And he's not only is he a good scout, is like the fact that he doesn't really have that is like the thing about him is like there's not a lot of people who have bad words to say about George Payton. Like
he has no ego.
Yeah. Like
you don't feel like you got flim-flammed if you do a deal with George Payton. He's not out to screw you. The players too.
The respect that he has around the league is so universal that it really it opens the door. The Broncos can get through the door to talk trade with pretty much anybody in the league because of the respect that George Payton has.
Yep.
Like, and this is what makes another thing that makes this process here in the next 48 to 52 hours so interesting is that everyone takes their calls because George is so good to work with. And again, like you say, he's not trying to screw you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, sometimes the Broncos in certain situations do have some hand. If it gets to 20 and the Broncos are in trade down mode, for example, and Shedeur is on the board, the Broncos will have hand potentially because there may be multiple teams seeking that pick. And the Broncos might have hand to get more in value than they surrender. Not only because there could be demand, but also historically, there is a quarterback premium when teams trade up to pick a passer in round one. So that is something to keep in mind as well. That's why I mentioned if you're at 20 and the Browns trade up, that's why I say a deal like 33, 67, and 94. The Broncos come out a bit ahead in point value on that, but that goes with the history of the quarterback premium on trades that happen like this over the last 15 years or so.
You want to guarantee Hampton. I don't think you have to get to 12. But if we're talking guarantee on this show, guarantee on the show is get to 12.
Well, the guarantee is probably 9 if you really want to push it.
Because of Chicago.
Yeah. But I'd say for practical purposes, I think the guarantee is 11.
Okay.
Jumping Dallas. I think that for practical purposes, the guarantee is 11. And you could probably do that effectively for pick 51, pick 51. And if we're really going to kind of just strictly kind of really get down to it, you could probably do that and I'm just going to kind of put together the deal here. It would probably be Broncos get pick 11 and pick 227. San Francisco gets 20, 51, and 197. I think that deal would probably do it.
Is that what you all want to do, Broncos Country? You can let us know down in the comments section because it's been an interesting thought experiment today, Mase.
Yes. They give up a 6th round pick as part of the deal. They get back a 7th. The George Payton kind of deal.
Yeah. And maybe this is the common ground. We said off air, we'll bring it to the on air conversation before we wrap. The way those two work together, Sean Payton and George Payton, this could be their compromise. Sean, you get to move up, but I get stuff back.
Yeah. Yeah. George likes to, he likes to get a little something back later, just in case, just as part of it. By the way, the 49ers do have 3 7th round picks. So
yeah, they'd be fine.
I chose the highest one of those. All those 7th round picks are actually 1 point of value, by the way. So,
and in this year's draft, isn't a 7th rounder worth a 6th, maybe a 5th?
Yeah, I just insisted on the highest one at 227. So the others are 249 and 252. Also, because I'm thinking of it from my perspective as a media member, I hate the picks that are at the end. I like the picks a little earlier because when you have those picks at the end and you've got that and then the player conference call and then George and Sean talking, it always turns into a cluster. So I'm trying to have that pick with a little bit of space before Sean and George talk. So I'm thinking selfishly here.
Speaking of cluster, programming note, we will have some special shows for you. We have to.
Yeah.
Mase and I are going to be burning both candles at the end, so just bear with us if we're a little tired or a little wired.
Yeah.
Not exactly sure, but for sure know that, you're going to have all your best draft coverage right here on our Denver Sports YouTube channel with us on Orange and Blue today. So
yep.
Just be ready.
We got you covered, folks. We got you covered.
I got 5 12-packs of Mountain Dew because they were buy 2, get 3 free.
Oh.
Stocking up.
What I need to do, I need to find some Mountain Dew Zero Baja Blast.
Oh, I got you covered, buddy. I got them. I got a 12-pack in the fridge in the garage.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where did you find it?
Safeway in Roxborough.
Can you if I spot you, can you bring me a 12-pack?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man.
Yeah, so you get on the Mountain Dew bandwagon with me. There you go.
Yeah, the zero sugar Baja Blast. That's the
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just gave it a lot of free pub here.
Hey, Sales. We'd love to be sponsored by Mountain Dew. Orange or blue today, brought to you by Baja Blast. Anyway, unpaid endorsement. He's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey. Before we're out of here, we need your endorsement, Mase. How can folks endorse us?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell. Ding.
So that you
never
miss
vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.